So now, vocabulary is very important. You understand what the questions are being asked of you. I'm hoping, based off what we had last day, that you guys sort of get what's going on, right? But the key thing is vocabulary. What did you forget? How well do you know it, right? And if you're away last day, right? Remember, you should be watching those videos online so you don't feel like you're lost, right? Because I hear you guys talking in the hallway. You're using a lot of slang that I didn't grow up with. I have no idea what you're saying. I don't know. I just hear you guys saying, I love Mr. Dhaliwal. He's got so much riz. I have no idea what you're saying. They're like, just like, no cap. Like, I just don't get it, all right? So there's lots of languages here. You just got to understand the words, right? So we're going to repeat some of the words here, right? So I'm going to put up an expression. We're going to go over the math terminology, right? So we have an expression. All right. What does this mean? Right? So it's a multiplication. Does this mean we have 6 sevens? Or does it mean we have 7 sixes? Jacob, what do you think? What does it mean?
7 6.
Jacob says 7 sixes. Do you guys agree with him?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are all sad. Huh? Yes, you're right. All right. So we have 7 sixes. All right. So 4, 5, 6, 7.
Are we ready?
No, you can we're just talking about it, right? You can write it down if you want. So now, this multiplication that I wrote out here, what was it called? This has a name. If I ask you to write this thing out, what am I asking you to do? It's asking you to write a, remember, it was called a repeated multiplication. So if I ask you to do a repeated multiplication, that's what I'm asking you to do. Or it may say the word expanded form. This is the condensed form. This is the expanded form. The condensed form, right? The 6, 7 here is also called a power. All right? So if I'm asking you to write this as a power, that's what I'm asking for. Or I may say write it as an exponential form. Those two words get used together. Now the power has 2 parts because you have 2 numbers. You have a base and you have an exponent. Which one's which? What's the base? The base is the big one, the one on the bottom. So this was the base, this was the exponent. Okay? Now, the trickiness of this chapter and all the way throughout this whole year and next year and the years after are going to be negative signs. That's where you're going to make the most amount of mistakes. Right? So we did the easier questions the other day. Today, the last little bit before we start our assignment, all these questions have negatives. Okay? And there's trickiness involved. Right? So this one says evaluate. That means come up with the answer. If you have to come up with the answer, you don't have to show the multiplication. I think it's nice and a little bit easier at the beginning. So maybe at the beginning you start writing out the multiplication. But if it says the word evaluate, you can use your calculator and come up with the answer, right? All right, so what we have is we have the exponent here. And it says repeat its base 4 times. That's all it means, right? And to find the base, right, you go to the left of the exponent. Here's the base. And that repeats 4 times. -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. You multiply those 4 numbers together or you use your calculator, what number do you get? I'm hoping you can do it in your head. All right? What would it be? Carter, you got this one?
16.
16. Now, positive 16 or negative 16?
Negative 16.
All right, do you guys agree with Carter? Carter says negative 16. I see your head shaking yes. All right, this is not correct. The 16 is right, but the negative isn't. So I'm hoping from last year, this recalls your memory, is if you have 2 negative signs being multiplied together, the answer is positive. But if you have a positive and a negative being multiplied, the answer is a negative. Right? So what that means is 2 negatives pair up to each other to make a positive. If you have an even amount of negatives, they all pair up. These two pair up to make a positive. These two pair up to positive. There's nothing left over. Even amount of negatives, the answer is always going to be positive. So the answer should be positive 16. All right? So if you need to write a little mental note for yourself to remind you to remember that from last year, write that down, right? Just little tips and tricks, right? So now, the one below this looks almost identical, right? And some of your guys' calculator, if you punched it into your calculator, would give you the right answer. And some of your guys' calculators are not programmed correctly, so the manufacturers made a mistake. They'll give you the wrong answer. Right? Does anybody want to guess at what the answer is? It's very similar to the one above. Right? You want to take a guess? John, you want to take a guess? No? I mean, I said there's a trick here, right? So, here we go. If I use my calculator, and my calculator gives the right answer, right? I'm going to open and clear all this stuff here. I go -2 to the exponent 4, I get the answer -16, right? And if you use your calculator, you use the exponent button, some of you guys might get the right answer of -16, some of you guys might get the wrong answer of +16. There you go, get it. And that, you can sit right in front of Keegan over there. There's also people over there, no problem, right? In the corner right there. But one more back, right there. There's just people away. Right here, right. Alright? So some of you guys, depending on your calculator, so if you have your scientific calculator, you should give it a try. It's not all calculators will give you the right answer. Now, you may look at this as why is it -16? Right? Because because the one above was +16. Right? So it's all depends on what is the base. Right? So this is how you figure out a base. Is all the questions last day were easier. You have your exponent, and whatever is just to the left of it is your base. So to the left of this 4 is just that number 2. So that 2 gets repeated, but not the negative sign. So if I write out the multiplication for this, is 4 2's being repeated. All right, but in the original question, we still have this minus sign up front. So in our expanded form here, we need to show one negative sign. So you can put that one negative sign on the first 2, or you can write this as -1 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Both of these things mean the same thing. This is a more common way to write it. This one's just a little bit more clear. All right? So if you look at this, there is only one negative sign. All right? So that's why the answer is -16. But in the question above, right, to the left of the 4 was a bracket. Right? So brackets come in pairs. So the bracket got repeated, and everything inside the bracket also gets repeated. That's why in the question above, the negative sign gets repeated. In the question below, it didn't. So that's the one thing you be super cautious of, is when you see brackets and negative signs, you gotta see what gets repeated, what doesn't. Okay? All right. Next one. We have this 3 sitting here, right? What gets repeated? George?
The -4.
Yeah, the -4. Because to the left of it, it's a pair of brackets, and everything inside the brackets gets repeated. So we're going to have 3 sets of brackets being repeated, and everything inside the brackets. Now, I don't care about the multiplication because that's something from elementary school. 4 times 4 times 4 is 64. Is it +64 or is it -64? That's the scale I want you to have for grade 9. What is it, Peyton?
+64.
You guys agree with Peyton?
Mm-hmm.
No. How many negative signs are there? 3. That's an odd number. So the answer is going to be negative 64, right? Two negatives pair up to make a positive, and you still have one extra negative left over. So the answer is going to be negative. All right. Yeah, you pair them up and just see what's left over. All right. Okay. Next question. You have the little 6 floating up in the air. What's its base? What gets repeated?
3.
George?
And negative 3 gets repeated.
Yeah. So to the left of this is the bracket right here. So that's what's going to get repeated. All right? 6 times. So the bracket gets repeated 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times with everything that's inside the brackets as well. So we have that minus 3 on the inside as well. Minus 3, minus 3, minus 3, minus 3, minus 3, minus 3. So now we look at the original question. Have we accounted for everything that was in the original question? No. We still have this extra minus sign on the outside that we need to show in the expanded form. So we throw in the extra minus sign as a times 1, negative 1. So if we multiply 3 7s together, we get 729. Okay, I know you guys can all do that. You can use a calculator. But is it positive 729 or is it negative 729? Negative. Because we have 7 negative signs. Right? Right? If you want to do the pairing up, these two pair up. These two pair up. These two pair up. You have one extra negative left over. So negative 729. Okay? So, in general, if you can imagine that, that's great. You will be fine. One of the questions on the assignment, I'm going to make you pay super close attention to this. It'll be super tricky. I'll give you tricky questions. It'll be questions like this, all right, to mess with your head. It'll be something like, let's go negative 2 to the 4, like this. All right. If I did that, and they give you a question like this, we have the 4. What gets repeated? What's your base? George?
Negative 2.
No. I put brackets in, but is a bracket to the left of the 4? So you have to be super careful. So to the left of the 4 is just the 2. So that 2 gets repeated, because that's just to the left of 4, nothing else does. So I would draw 4 2's, because that's getting repeated. Then at the end, I'll fill in the stuff that haven't repeated. There's an extra minus sign here, right? In front, like this. And if you could put brackets in, like this, but it's not necessary because there's nothing left on the outside, right? Okay. So, 4 2's. 2, 4, 8, 16. Right? So the answer of 16, positive 16 or negative 16? Negative. Right? So one of the questions on the assignment is sort of like this. There'll be easy ones like this, and there'll be very sneaky ones like this. But you gotta pay attention. What is to the left of the exponent? What gets repeated? What doesn't get repeated? And most math questions, give me a second here, Tucker, won't be like this. Alright? I probably wouldn't do that on a test. Most of them would be sort of like these ones, the ones we did up above, because that's sort of how common questions show up. But just on this assignment, I'm going to throw some weird oddball ones in just to mess with you, just to make sure you know how to read exponents. That's all. Tucker, do you have a question? In a moment. All right. So that is it for our notes. For our assignment, I give you another booklet that looks just like this. Right, and it looks like, let's go empty blank. There we go. It's a sheet like this. All right. So it's got everything for the whole chapter inside of it. So don't lose it because I collected it at the end of the chapter. Right. And you go, we just finished our first set of notes, day 1 notes. So you go to assignment 1. All my assignments, for the most part, are only 2 pages long. Right. So you have the first page and you have the second page. Right. Now, I do have an optional third page. It'll say day 1 extending. Right, so if you're done the assignment, you want to try something a little bit more challenging, try that. Because I'm not sure if you recall, but the first day I said, hey, all my extending stuff is the stuff we do in grade 9, and how does it look like in grade 10? So if you do the extending, which I highly encourage you to, right, you'll have a little bit easier time next year. So you're like, oh, I've already seen this. Right, and it just gets you started off a little bit better next year, right? So now, in addition to this, is when you're doing assignments, for the people who are new to my class, I usually roll out a board like this. Okay? And it has usually most of the answers on it. Because I don't want you doing a whole pages with a math and having all the questions wrong. That's not very helpful. Right? So the answers are up here for you to check your work as you go along. Right? And you have me and Miss Debbie here. If you're not getting the answers, I expect you to put your hand up. Hey, Mr. Dhaliwal, I don't know why the answer is that. So we can figure it out, right? So assignment is going to be due next class. I'm not going to really repeat that too much after. So next day, we're going to go over the assignment. I'll share my answer key with you guys so you can see all the work behind it, right? And we also will do quiz. My quizzes aren't very big, right, Ernest? Right? So don't worry about it. Right? You'll be ready as long as you're paying attention to class. That's it. And Tucker, you can go. All right. So I'll hand out the assignments.